Hey, everybody, welcome to another exciting edition of Pierre the Chef. I am joined, as always, by my good buddy Christopher. How are you, my friend?
I am good and fully coming out of the pandemic, but hopefully won't have to be back in the office real soon. So there's that because I much prefer the telecommuting to actually showing up and driving in and dealing with people. The
Yeah,
normal.
it seems like everybody's hoping that will be that will just continue. Like, can we just not? Can we just keep not coming into the office? That will be fine.
Most people are like, not all, not all. I was at the credit union yesterday cashing a check, and the person said her husband can't wait to get back into the office. So there are some, but not many.
Freaks.
Apparently, my job did a survey about who would be willing to come back into the office before the office actually opens up to the public again. Just trying to get a sense of how many. But
Yeah.
they did say that the results, what you submitted was binding. So if you said, "Yeah, I'm willing to come in," you had to come in. It wasn't, it was, "Are you going to or not?" And apparently, the number of people said, "Yeah, sure, I'll come in," was zero. So that's
Smart
what I'm
people.
told. I was not at the meeting. That's what I'm told.
Oh, hearsay.
But they didn't call anyone back in yet because they said they have enough people in the office to maintain the functions that you need people in the office for. And you know, actually, when I went in to get the computer because we had to bring the work computer home, one supervisor said, since we've started the telecommuting for the pandemic, productivity has actually gone up. So I don't know if that's maintained or not, but at the time, apparently, it was working out very well.
Well, you know what it is? It's because people are motivated to prove that the telecommuting is viable so they can keep doing it.
Right. And not spending all your time talking to coworkers or being distracted by annoying coworkers or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Not that any of my coworkers are annoying if any of them are watching.
No, no. He's not talking about any of you.
Yeah, I don't mean you. I mean the other person. You know who I mean.
You all know who he means. Come on, you all know who he means. Um, so regular viewers will notice that it's just the two of us
Which is
again.
regular.
You know,
Yeah, I will tell you. You're going to ask me where Pierre is. You always ask me where Pierre is,
right?
and usually I have an answer. I don't know where Pierre is. I haven't heard from him. I thought he was going to be here, but I have
Yeah.
not heard from him.
Well, that's the reason actually that I bring it up. I was just gonna I'm gonna take responsibility this time because Pierre,
Oh, well, okay, wait.
please.
You're taking responsibility, so I got to ask, what the hell did you do this time?
Well, Pierre wanted to be on the show, and
That's new.
I all I did was I asked to see his vaccination card, and he told me that he didn't have it, and I said, "Why don't you have it, Pierre?" And he said, "Because I haven't been vaccinated yet." So I said, "Well, if you're not vaccinated, then you're not coming on the show."
Yeah, because I got mine.
Yeah, I mean, and
So
especially since that's what we're going to talk about. Like our topic today is going to be about people who are hesitant to get the COVID vaccine. I've gotten it. You've gotten it.
yes,
Pierre
my whole
hasn't gotten
family's
it.
had it. Okay, I'm going to ask, and not a criticism.
Okay.
If the topic of the show had been anything else, would you have said okay, or is it just there's a certain disconnect in letting an unvaccinated person do a show about the importance of actually getting a vaccination?
If it had been anything else, I would have welcomed him on the show with open arms.
So this is just a matter of coincidental subject timing kind of stuff.
Totally. Total coincidence.
I'm trying to figure out if he's got the worst effing luck or if he actually like plots this stuff in advance because this is just uncanny.
You're saying that maybe he intentionally told me he hadn't been vaccinated, knowing that I would ban him from the show so he wouldn't have to do the show.
Perhaps it's just
But he could still look good by making it appear as though he was willing to do the show.
yeah, kind of. It just this is episode number what? I've lost track.
36.
36, and he is 0 for 35.
Yes.
because if you check the numbering, there's one or two
There's one
missing.
missing, but yeah.
Yeah, there's one missing, and there's one that the feed didn't go through properly, and we had to take it down. But he's over 35 now on 36 on show number 36.
Yep. Yep.
He's like the Arizona Diamondbacks.
he's like he's the bizarro Cal Ripken.
Since nobody's going to understand that joke, possibly some people don't understand it now. The Diamondbacks. I don't know how they did last night, but before that, they had won 2 of their last 30 games. They had a pair of losing streaks of 13 games or more, and they set the major league record for most consecutive losses on the road. So yeah, they're not doing. They went from 18-22 to 20-50.
And you know the irony is for there to be such an awful baseball team in Arizona, the irony is that Arizona is one of the places that baseball teams go to practice.
Yeah, well, maybe nobody's told the Diamondbacks that the practice is over and the games are counting.
Dude,
Wouldn't it be funny if the Arizona Diamondbacks decided that they're going to do spring training in the Grapefruit League instead of the Cactus League?
I was just gonna say, like, do the Diamondbacks go like to New York for their spring training camp? Like, everybody else comes to Arizona or Florida. Like, maybe they go up north. I'm just saying. I don't know. They get sick of being like, it's
They,
sort of,
they can't go too far north because Canada won't let them in, which is why Toronto hasn't technically played a home game in like
yeah,
20 months.
yeah.
What a world. But yeah, we
So,
are
yeah.
theoretically we're coming out of this. We shall see, because the number of people who still don't take it seriously and the number of places that aren't getting vaccinated are significant enough that we get a new strain and have a bit of a relapse as time goes on here.
Yeah,
Although,
I'm really hoping, like, I'm really hoping that with the summer holidays coming up, and I mean, everybody going to cookouts or going to the beach or whatever, that we don't start to see, spikes in infection. I hope that enough of us have been vaccinated, and enough of us are still willing to behave sensibly when out in groups of people, that it won't be so bad, um, or even bad at all. But who knows?
yeah, because the guidance used to be you have to wear a mask. So when you saw people who weren't wearing masks, then you knew those were the people who just didn't care, were anti-vaxxers, were basically the morons. Now they're like, well, if you've gotten the vaccination, you don't need to wear a mask, but you still sort of want to at times because you don't know who isn't. So now, if you're fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. So now it's sort of gone upside down, and they say you have to wear a mask if you haven't been vaccinated. So if you're still wearing one because you're concerned, now wearing the mask makes you only be anti-vaxxer instead of the person who's actually being responsible.
Right, exactly.
it's,
It's
it's a little
completely
bit,
flipped. Yeah.
it's unintentional, I think, but it's a little bit weird.
Well, and I mean, the worst part is, like, it's not the fault of the people who are being responsible. I mean,
No,
if you
it
have
rarely is.
if you have been vaccinated and you still feel like it's the responsible thing to wear a mask, like, you haven't done anything wrong to invite people to sort of look at you sideways and go, um, the shame of it is that there has ever been a large enough group of people that, like, tried to make a virtue of blowing off pandemic precautions, that you would even notice things like that. I mean,
Yeah, well, I think a lot of well, first of all, the whole anti-vax thing goes back to that discredited and later retracted and apologized for publication. The article that connected vaccines to autism, which
oh
is
yeah, the
actually
MMR
total
vaccine.
garbage.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that has triggered the current nonsense about how if you get a vaccine, you're hurting yourself. It's like protecting yourself from disease is a bad thing, apparently. And I think it comes largely down to the same thing as what we talked about when we were talking about conspiracy theories, that a lot of the anti-vax movement is motivated by people who want to look smart and feel smart and be taken as smart without going through any of the actual work to be smart.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and that the comparison to conspiracy theories is right on. 'Cause, I mean, really,
Especially when you have the people claiming that there's going to be microchips in
oh
the
my
vaccine
God.
that'll track you. Like, there's microchips in this to track you. Okay, they
Yeah.
don't need to put it in your blood.
Well, I mean, and look, I mean, anti-vax is a conspiracy theory. And some of the wackier claims of it, like the magnetism thing, or and like, did you see a couple weeks ago the woman was given that she was giving like a statement to, like, it was like a state legislature or a town meeting or something somewhere, and she was, she claimed that the COVID vaccine had magnetized her, and she tried to get her car keys to stick to her neck, which wouldn't have worked even if she was magnetized because car keys aren't magnetic. But anyway, um, and I just thought, like, would it have killed you to just spray like some adhesive on your neck before you came in? Like, if you're going to do a
Well,
magic trick, you got to do the prep first,
a lot of the early
like,
stuff with that, even before the vaccine, where you can get metal to stick to you, basically it just has to do with skin oil and not
yeah,
being clean. And that you put like you soap and water or like a talcum powder or something that takes care of that, then everything just falls right off. So it doesn't stick anymore. So it's sort of the same thing. It's just maybe she prepared to before the whole preparing in public and thought it was going to work, but it didn't because she eliminated the cause of what caused it, assuming she believed it in the first place, which
don't
is,
don't you realize that talcum powder cancels out magnetism? Don't you
I do.
understand?
I do not remember that
That's
particular
I'm
thing coming up in any of the science classes I took. But mind you, I know that science is an enemy of a large portion of the American people.
I'm
But
pretty sure that's how it works. The talcum powder cancels out magnets. But anyway, um,
then you're
yeah.
telling me that all that shit with the X-Men and Magneto destroying everything, all they did was throw talcum powder at him, and they would have been fine.
Well, what they should, what really, what Wolverine should have just rolled himself around in talcum powder so he was coated, and then he could have just walked right up to Magneto and sliced his head off. Problem solved.
Except Magneto would have heard him coming because he'd be sneezing violently. But still,
Hold your breath, Logan. The mission depends on it.
oh
Yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, I feel like I always have to qualify this a little bit because there is a small percentage of people who, and I'm talking about adults because in most places, children below a certain age still aren't approved to get it. But if you're like over the age of 15, in most places in the United States, you're eligible to get vaccinated. And there's a small number of people who can't get it for medical reasons. Um,
boy, are people taking advantage of that.
yeah. So if you are not one of those people, if you do not have a legitimate medical reason why you don't want to get vaccinated or can't get vaccinated, and you have the ability to get vaccinated and you have chosen not to, I hope you die. Like, I think you are a horrible person.
I have a level of that too with a lot of different things where
I
it's like,
like
you know, and the terrible thing is like other people around you don't necessarily deserve it, but you do. It's like,
yeah.
or when you see like a, I remember having that thought with like an absurd, some sort of absurd sports contract. I think it was one of the A-Rod deals. And I'm like, if he suffered a career-ending injury like tomorrow after signing this 10-year deal, he wouldn't necessarily deserve that, but the team would for doing that,
Right.
for being dumb enough to offer him that deal.
Right.
You know,
Enjoy paying that off for the next 10 years.
yeah, I see stuff like this anti-vax thing, and it's like, you know what? You deserve to die, but your kids don't deserve to lose a parent. You
No,
know?
I hope. Well. I mean, I hope. My hope is that your house catches fire and your whole family makes it out, but you. You know what I mean? Like, there is no excuse for it. I don't care like, if you don't have a valid medical excuse, then you don't have an excuse. I mean, there just in this country alone, it's over 600,000 dead people.
Oh, I actually,
I mean,
I did. I mean, that's the official number. The
yeah, it's
estimates
probably
are
a lot
probably
higher than
higher.
that. Yeah.
I did some back of the envelope calculations. I'm not going to claim this is hugely scientific because data is hard to come by in different places, different sources, whatever. But what I did is I tried to find what I could. I spent like half an hour doing web search. So obviously I'm not an expert on this, but after about half an hour of trying to find the rate at which people had these severe or life-threatening reactions to the vaccine,
Mm-hmm.
because the Johnson & Johnson one got pulled when like 4 people had reactions after 4 million doses were administered.
The
So that's
blood clot
literally
thing,
one in a
yeah.
million.
Yeah.
And I tried to do some other. That's about the number I came up with for all of the other different vaccines. The rate, the human population is what, 6 billion,
Mm-hmm.
or 6.5.
Something like that.
The rate at which the human population, the rate at which people had severe reactions to the vaccine is actually lower than the rate at which the entire human race has died of COVID.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I can have a certain chance of dying, or I can eliminate it by having a lower chance of having a bad reaction. It's like, well, I'd rather die.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and that's the thing is like people don't realize you're playing the odds either way. Like if you don't get the vaccine, you remain at higher risk for the virus, which is more dangerous than the vaccine by orders of magnitude. So why aren't you getting the vaccine? Like you're at risk no matter what you do. Why not choose the option that puts you at significantly lower risk? It makes no sense at all. I mean,
People just they believe what they want to believe, and
yeah. Well, it's like when people when you talk about gun control and people say like, well, if you get rid of the guns, people are just going to use knives. Like, are
like,
you are
good.
you are you really that worried about somebody coming at you with a knife as opposed like would you, if someone is determined
Picture
to
picture the guy in Las Vegas who shot into the concert and killed. How many people died in that?
oh
It was,
god, yeah, dozens.
picture him up there flinging knives down to the
Yeah.
crowd, and tell me how bad would that have been?
Yeah, I'm sure it would have sucked for a couple of people. I don't mean to minimize the damage that could be done by, a murderer with a knife, but
Yeah,
let's
well,
be
but
honest.
some judge in California compared assault rifles to a pocket knife.
Oh
So
yeah.
what are you gonna do?
Yeah, exactly.
I bet he's not
Um,
vaccinated.
well, which that annoyed me, of course, because he said he compared AR-15s to Swiss Army knives, and I carry a Swiss Army knife.
But
Um,
MacGyver never solved his problems with an AR-15.
Well, and MacGyver never tried to kill anybody with a Swiss Army knife because it's not a killing type of knife. It's a tool. It's meant the blades on a Swiss Army knife are meant for cutting and for shaving and for using as tools. You're not supposed to stab. It's not a weapon. An
You don't,
AR-15 is only a weapon.
you don't go people's eyes with a corkscrew.
No, I mean you can for shits and giggles, but you're not supposed to. Like it's not that's not the it has legitimate uses. There's no legitimate use for an AR-15. It's purely to kill people. It's a unitasker is what I'm saying. Um, a Swiss Army knife is a multitasker. But yeah, people they make up things to be afraid of so that they have something, and then they pretend that that's a greater risk than the thing that they're avoiding doing. That's exactly what they're doing with the vaccine thing. Like you have way more to fear from the virus than you have from the vaccine.
I mean, and people still try to pretend that it wasn't that big a deal. I mean, Broadway shut down for a year.
Yeah.
Disneyland shut down. Disneyland is not shut down for the flu.
the
Have you seen the numbers about the flu between last winter and the winter before?
Oh yeah, the actual yeah
That
the normal
the
seasonal
actual
flu dropped down to almost nothing because everybody was
it
wearing
went
masks and washing their hands.
yeah they went 2 years ago, 2 winters ago. It was like 38 million cases in the United States with 22,000 deaths from the flu,
Hmm.
and last year it was 2,300 cases.
Yeah, it's
It
staggering.
was it went from 38 million to 2,300 cases of the
Yeah,
flu. They stopped the flu dead in its tracks, and
just
COVID
by
still
avoiding
went.
each other and wearing masks.
Yes,
Yeah,
and they're saying that there could be a problem with the flu vaccine next year because they don't know what to base it on because the flu was knocked down so badly this year they have no direct idea what direction it's going in.
Right.
Which, you know, honestly, if you're going to have a problem, having the problem that we were too effective at dealing with the disease one year is probably not a bad problem to
Yeah,
have.
it's I can't see, like, I can't imagine that these are the problems you want to have, really, you know. But yeah, it's, you know, it's people wanting to act like they're smarter than they are. Like you said, you know, people who want to be smart without actually putting in the work to learn things. And a lot of it's just contrarianism, you know, just people who see things going this way, so they say, well, I'm going to go that way, just for no other reason than just because they're contrarian. um you know.
Like, why did you get the vaccine? Because I'm not a fucking idiot. That's why
Yeah.
I got the vaccine. Because I see, you know, that I trust that the Center for Disease Control, which has dedicated professionals who have spent their lives studying these things and have a budget of millions and millions of dollars and who make this their life's work. I think that they have a better idea than what's going on than whatever you read on Hillary.eagle.com that tells you that it's all conspiracy theory. You know, I believe the math, I believe the science, and I'm not an idiot. So yeah, I got the vaccine.
Well, and it's like, it's so much of it is this arbitrary selective skepticism, because one of the things that they like to say is, well, why would you get that vaccine? You don't know what's in that, right? Well, I mean, do you drive a car? Did you build your car yourself? You know, like, have you ever flown on an airplane? Did you build the plane? Have you ever been on a train? Did you, like, have you ever eaten any food that has been prepared for you by someone else? Have you ever been to a drive-through? Have you ever been to a restaurant? Have you ever eaten something that was in a package at the grocery store that you opened it up and just ate? Like, you don't know what's in that. We accept
I buy
all of
over the
these.
yeah, you buy over the counter medicine. What's in
Yeah,
that?
yeah, you don't know. You didn't pack those Tylenol capsules yourself. You don't know what's in there. Like, we accept all of this because we know that we have standards, we have health and safety institutions in this country that inspect things and that make sure that things are safe. And when something turns out to not be safe as a result of some kind of an accident or unintentional contamination, or somebody in, you know, trying to hurt people, like, those are outliers, and they're investigated, and if people are found to be responsible, they're held accountable, and an overall standard of safety is maintained, and we accept
And,
that.
yeah, and I've heard the skepticism. One of the forms of skepticism on is, well, they got it so fast, it hasn't gone through the same testing the other ones have. It's like it's gone through the same testing. It went through it a lot faster because this was a much bigger deal.
Yeah.
Because this shut down the planet.
Yeah,
And
like,
so
maybe you heard about it.
a lot of yeah, maybe you heard it was a big deal. A lot of people focused on this. A lot of people were working on this. A lot of people were dedicated to addressing this as quickly as possible, and it worked because we have got a vaccine now. And in one of those no shit Sherlock headlines of the year, there was an article that said that the vast majority of people who are still going to the hospital for COVID are unvaccinated. Go
Yeah.
figure.
Just, and the people who are, you know, whether they're hospitalized or not, who are experiencing noticeable symptoms, you know, because, like, there, if you have been vaccinated, there is still the chance that you will contract the virus. It's not 100% foolproof protection,
Nothing is.
but
But
yeah,
yeah, we do,
nothing is.
and we. I'm glad. I'm sorry.
No, but you will all, if you do get it, you'll almost certainly have far, far, far milder symptoms than you would have otherwise, you know. Well, and I
Well,
mean, and there are some people who got it before there were vaccines, who tested positive, who never showed symptoms. I mean, sometimes people are just, you know, for what,
asymptomatic.
yeah, for whatever reason. But you don't know if that's going to be you or not, because a lot of people got it, and it, you know, some people in
Probably the
extreme
most famous
cases died
case.
within a matter of days after showing symptoms. I mean, some people really got it bad.
I think the most famous example of the asymptomatic versus was the so-called Typhoid Mary.
Yeah.
who had it and was wildly contagious but never showed any symptoms, but infected a lot of people and was eventually isolated against her will for the rest of her life, which is still a matter of discussion in certain ethics and discussions of medical ethics and so on.
Hmm.
Which, you know, when you can see both sides of it, I mean, just because you don't have the symptoms doesn't mean that you don't have it and you can't spread it. But this is, you know, part of the thing about the whole anti-vax movement is that it really does come from a position of privilege to be able to say that, because we live in a world where vaccines are so prevalent and so effective that we take them for granted and feel safe in dismissing them. I mean, we don't know anyone who's had smallpox or polio. We never had classmates who had problems like that because we have vaccines for them that were so widespread and applied so applied to so many people
Yeah.
that those diseases are largely eradicated, at least in the United States. But when the anti-vax movement started up, certain chickenpox and stuff, there measles was it, there were outbreaks of them in anti-vax areas where diseases that had been nearly eliminated started roaring back when people weren't getting the vaccines for it. I mean,
Yeah.
it's obvious as hell how effective vaccines are. One of the most effective scientific things that we have ever accomplished as a species.
Oh my God. It's arguably the most important medical breakthrough ever. I
Yes,
mean, if you look at the number of lives
absolutely.
that have been saved, I mean, it's no contest.
And being able to dismiss that simply because it's been so effective that you don't have any comprehension of what the damage of those lack of vaccines was, I mean, that is very much a position of privilege to be able to make that argument.
I agree with you. Yeah, there was Patton Oswalt was on Conan O'Brien's show last week, and they were talking about the COVID vaccine, and he addressed the vaccine hesitancy, and he mentioned how in the 50s when they came out with the polio vaccine, like people lined up for it, like they were like, yes, give me the polio vaccine, absolutely, I'll take it. And this was in the 1950s, before we had a space program, before there was any such thing as an artificial satellite, when there was a significantly lower level of technology and scientific literacy than there is today, and people lined up and said, I don't care what's in it, give me the vaccine, I don't want polio. Right now, today, 2021, we all have phones that can enable us to talk to any other person on any other part in the planet. Like, we have access to incredible technology, incredible levels of knowledge, and there are people.
Nearly, yeah, nearly the sum total of human knowledge is available at your fingertips.
Yeah, and today we have people who respond to the COVID vaccine by saying it's got witch poison in it. No, you're not putting that in my arm. And it's like what has happened? And I think a lot of it is that what you just mentioned, that privilege that people are. Most of us have been lucky enough to grow up in a society where there there aren't the sorts of widespread diseases that every back in the day everybody was afraid of. Back in the day, it was a parent's worst nightmare that their child would develop polio, because it happened a lot, and there seemed to be nothing you could do about it. It was just luck of the draw. You were struck ill and you didn't know what happened. And vaccines took that away. They alleviated that fear, and entire generations of people have now grown up without that and have no idea what that's like. So when something like COVID happens and it's a massive pandemic that does affect everybody, there are a lot of people that just seem to default to, well, no, that doesn't happen. That's not real. That sort of thing doesn't. No, we don't have those. Those sorts of things don't happen, even when it is literally happening in front of their face. Um,
People don't. It's not that people don't have appreciation; so they don't even have fundamental comprehension of things that are outside their immediate level of experience.
yeah, and they mistrust expertise. You
Yeah,
know,
when did intelligence become a vice or something to be avoided? I mean, it's like a lot of what I see from, and it's not solely conservatives, but it's primarily conservatives. But
yeah,
you see it in a lot of different things where people, and again, I think it's one thing about wanting to feel smart without being smart. People are intimidated to some extent by intelligence. They feel inadequate in some way that people know more than they do, and so it reached a point where intelligence was looked down upon. Like you look at the people that, again, to point at one particular party here in the United States. Look at the people the Republicans have been nominating for the highest offices in the land.
Mm-hmm.
They're not
Yeah.
going for the shining jewels. They're looking for the people who say, "Wow, I'm smarter than that person."
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you've got Trump, and you've got Gohmert, and you've got Cruz, and you've got Gates and Matt Gaetz, and you've got Green, who decided to hold a press conference to say that she learned something about the Holocaust, and she's pretty sure it was bad.
Yeah, she went to the Holocaust Museum and decided, oh, I guess it was bad after all.
And held a press
Like,
conference to let people know.
yeah, hey everybody, just to let you know, I did the research, which means I toured the permanent exhibition at the Holocaust Museum, and I have made the determination that actually the Holocaust was pretty bad. Sorry.
The Earth is still flat, though.
The earth is still flat. The earth is totally flat
I
and
like it was
6,000 or so years old.
the hell pie theory. I like
Yeah,
the
exactly.
the
Exactly.
the thing I saw online said that the person said their proof that the Earth isn't flat is that if it was, capitalism would have exploited it, and you'd have tours to go to the edge of the Earth, and you'd have
Totally.
swings that would swing you over the edge.
Totally. Oh man, I kind of wish it was flat now. That'd be awesome. I'd go on a swing off the edge of the earth. That'd be great.
Yeah, except that probably would have been the safety on that would have been approved by somebody who was nominated by Trump, who said went to the lowest bidder, throw a
Yeah.
break, and you just fly off into space.
Well then the next step would be to get Trump on one of those things. Come on, Mr. President, it's totally safe. Come on.
And I just take this moment to say that, well, I am sorry that I mentioned him, but I'm glad that we are not having to do the 5 minutes of Trump segment anymore.
Yes. Yes. So am I. So am I. And I'm glad that his fucking blog went down in flames and he had to take it down in disgrace after like a month.
No one's reading it.
Yeah. Yeah. No one was reading it.
I like the ones in the Daily Show tweet where Donald Trump Jr. wished his father a happy birthday, and the Daily Show responded, "You know he can't see this, right?"
He's not on here anymore.
But
Yeah.
even though he was helping stoke the fears about the vaccine, when it became available, a lot of the Republicans in Congress were the first ones to line up to get it, even as they were talking about how worthless it was.
Oh, of course. Well, just like they went back to their districts and bragged about stuff that was in a bill that they voted against.
Mhm.
They voted against. Yeah.
You know what I thought would be a good catch about things like that when it comes to funding for different areas or financial support or aid or whatever. Put something in the bill that says if both senators and the Republican for that district vote against it, all three of the federal elected representatives said they didn't want it, so that district does not get the benefits.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, you didn't want it.
And see how well how many of them are going to continue to vote against these things and then go back home and try to brag about what they did.
Yeah. And make sure
you can do that, right? You can put something in that says if all three elected representatives didn't want it, then we're not going to give it.
I don't see why not. I don't see why not.
You get a $2,000 pandemic stimulus check, but not for you guys because your representatives went 0 for 3.
Yeah, exactly. You don't get it. Sorry.
I think that'd be a good thing to plug into some of those bills to try to let people or convince them to do the right thing based on political expedience rather than actually being the right thing. That doesn't seem to motivate a lot of them anymore.
Well, not that did it ever?
I think it's become a bit more brazen than it has been in the past.
Oh, definitely. I agree with that. It's definitely, yeah. Well, because they found out from the Trump.
There's no shame in it. The people will support. It's like
Exactly.
You can go back to your constituents and say, "I voted against your health care. I voted against the economic stimulus. I voted against the public welfare. I voted to help export your jobs to China. Yeah, go me!" And they'll stand there and cheer him.
Yeah.
Or her, but mostly him because
Mostly
it's
him.
America.
Yeah, it's
It is amazing how much people vote against their own self-interest because they believe the nonsense about about anything really. And
Well, they believe a lot of it is they believe what they want to believe, and they find uh, the evidence that supports what they already believe. They find the evidence that reinforces their pre-existing
and
position.
and part of the problem was part of what brought that about, I think, was well intentioned in the press, especially TV news and stuff, where the concept of giving a balanced picture means providing, showing both sides of an issue. And what you end up with is certain issues where you can get experts lining up around the block for one side of the issue, and the same two or three people fighting against, fighting the other side of the issue, and you keep bringing in these people showing it one on one and creating an equivalency where one doesn't exist. The idea is, show both sides of an issue, but if 99% of people say yes, this is the way it is, and 1% say no, it's not, giving that 1% 50% of the exposure does not help.
Yeah.
It creates the image that there's more validity to that than there is. And I think that's something that was well intentioned but helped create this problem on a lot of different fronts.
And it's amazing and frustrating how many people fail or refuse to grasp that very basic concept. That if
If you're talking about the Earth is a sphere and one side says the Earth is a disc because it's flat, you don't give the people who say the Earth is flat the same credibility you gave the other people.
no, those aren't equivalent positions. Like, I mean, well, and that we ran into that issue over the years with like the creation versus evolution debates. Where the people who were in favor of creationism, very smartly, because most people, most just ordinary citizens aren't well versed in the finer points of evolutionary biology, so they didn't
Or
lean
the
in.
most fundamental aspects of it.
Yeah, they didn't lean into the religious angle. They tried to reframe it as, well, this is an alternate theory to Darwinism. This is just another explanation, and don't our students deserve to hear both sides? And they create the false impression that there are two sides, but
That's
there
the
aren't two
actual
sides.
creationism.
Yeah, there aren't two sides, because creationism is not scientifically valid. Like
and
there's you
and
know
they can and they frame the argument so they get themselves into a good position because you can't disprove a falsehood, and you sort of pass that responsibility off, knowing that it's impossible for the other side to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
And
like if I say that electricity is caused by electron flow through the wires, and you say the electricity is caused by leprechauns who live in the wires magically making electricity work, and then they say, well, disprove the leprechaun theory.
show me evidence that there aren't leprechauns in the wires.
Yeah,
Show me.
also there's a dragon in the garage,
Everybody
the invisible
knows.
dragon.
Everybody knows that the leprechauns are really living in the vaccines, and that's what's causing all the mischief, because
Which
the
is why
vaccines
Pierre's
are.
not here today.
Yeah, because you know how he feels about the Irish anyway. I mean, uh, so you know
He has his issues, yes.
he does. He's I personally don't
But
feel it quite rises to the level of racism, but it's right there on the line. Some of the things he says are in French, so I can only make out so much of it, but it sounds pretty rough.
but
You know.
he also but then again it when he's here in the United States that day usually sells pretty well with the food and the thing, so it's profitable, so he tolerates it. But isn't that also the way? As long as there's money involved, he can overlook a lot of other things.
Yeah, and there's that's another part of the whole anti-vax thing, is that it's quite a lucrative grift for a lot of people, because it turns out there is a pretty large audience that are willing to support you and even pay you if you tell them what they want to hear, or you tell them that what they believe already is the truth, and they don't need to change or learn or grow. Their initial reflexive reaction was correct, and they get to pat themselves on the back, and they're more than willing to to help you make a living off of it, because you've given them what they really want, which is uh, validation for what they already had. You know, um, that's that. I don't know if you watched, or if anybody else who's watching this watched the most recent H Bomber guy video that was all about the anti-vax movement. But one of the really eye-opening parts of that was the way he detailed how Andrew Wakefield, the guy who wrote that discredited study that you referenced a while ago, that started the whole vaccines cause autism thing. That
It's
his
a shit thing to be upset about as well, because like better dead than autistic is a pretty
Yeah,
terrible thing
yeah,
to take.
yeah. Like, I mean, even if vaccines did cause autism, which they don't, but even if they did, would you? Yeah, would you rather risk your child possibly developing autism, or would you rather risk your child dying?
It's
It's
the same risk that people are
Yeah,
taking with this whole COVID vaccine. I mean, there's different things that show up people who are anti-vaxxers and they're proud not to take it, and then they die of it. And it's like, well, at least he didn't have any bad side effects. That would have been terrible, right? It's like you just want to. It's one of those things where you really don't want to speak ill of the dead. You don't want to mock the dead, but oh my God, this was so avoidable.
yeah. Well, yeah. I
It,
mean,
it's like I soaked myself in gasoline and accelerant, and then I started juggling lit torches, and then I caught fire, and I'm the victim here. What the
yeah,
hell? It's like it becomes a point where you're like, you really played a large role in this that you could have avoided if you had just used the slightest bit of brain cells.
yeah. Like maybe people shouldn't be that upset about your loss. I mean, you're kind of responsible for this.
This is
But
Darwin Award material.
yeah, well, but like, I mean, the thing about Andrew Wakefield I was trying to get to is like, his job now is basically speaking at anti-vax conferences. Like that's what he does to
By
earn a living
taking
now.
by getting a bullshit study published, he's managed to make an entire career out of continuing to lie.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the career that he planned on, but it's the career he has, and apparently he's still doing pretty well. You know what I mean? Like, I, and there is, despite the fact that he has been completely discredited in the medical community, there's still enough of an audience for that message that he's able that can be his job, and he
It's an even
can.
more disgraceful way to make a living than churning out more versions of Madden football for EA. That's it's just terrible.
But yeah, I mean, it's so that's another reason why these sorts of anti-science and anti-vax theories and conspiracy theories and whatever you want to call them are so difficult to get rid of, which is there's a good buck in continuing to push them, and because a lot of it has taken on a lot of it has become part of the right versus left, progressive versus conservative culture war. It's like, well, if I'm on the right wing team, my team is anti-intellectual, my team is anti-science, so go team. A lot of it, there's not a whole lot more thought put into it than that.
It's hard to believe how much people can be against science when their entire lives revolve around what science has given them. It wasn't there that one thing about the Westboro Baptist Church talking about how great it was that Steve Jobs was dead for all the terrible things he did and it was posted from an iPhone?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, at least get an Android phone. That's that little bit of hypocrisy that's just so easily avoided. Like, make
But
an effort.
yeah,
That's all I
but,
ask.
but
Just make a minimal effort.
hypocrisy is just the name of the game in this country because like we do all this stuff. Like we had the whole pandemic, and we referred to people as heroes. We didn't do anything to raise minimum wage. We referred to the medical workers as heroes. We haven't done anything to improve things for them, and we say that we painted Black Lives Matter on a lot of streets, but we didn't really do much about police immunity for
Yeah.
that. And we made Juneteenth a federal holiday, but we're also banning critical race theory, so you can't tell people why it's a holiday. This This country is
Yeah.
very good at being very, very stagnant, but very, very performative to distract from it.
Yeah. Well, there was a great example of that just recently. James Lindsay was on Mark Lamont Hill's show to talk about critical race theory, which is something that James Lindsay knows absolutely nothing about, but is dead set against, and thinks we absolutely should not be teaching it and should ban it from the schools. And you know so
Shocking.
so there's a really great clip going around on Twitter of Lindsay on and Mark Lamont Hill sort of going back and forth on this, and Mark Lamont Hill basically takes him to school in like the space of about 2 minutes and rattles off a whole bunch of expertise that makes it, he doesn't go into any sort of depth with any of it, but he makes it clear that he's done the reading, he knows what he's talking about. And if there was more time, or if there was more interest, like he could totally talk about this. He's fluent in the subject, right? He knows what this actually is and what it isn't. And he just gives this response for a couple of minutes, and James Lindsay, like sort of muttering under his breath, says, "Boy, you know a lot about this." And my initial response and Mark Lamont, it actually stopped Mark Lamont Hill short. Like he sort of like his voice caught in his throat, and he was like, "What? Like, what did you say?" And it's like, of course I know a lot about it. I'm talking about it on fucking TV. Like, why are you talking about it on TV if you don't know about it? What is this? What are you doing here? Um, but then James Lindsay on Twitter after that, he tried to save face by arguing that, well, the fact that Mark Lamont Hill knew so much about it was is something that made him suspect, because why would he know so much about it unless he was some kind of wild-eyed Marxist or communist or whatever. Like, so he took the expertise that was just shoved in his face and used to humiliate him, and he's like, well, yeah, why does he know so much about it anyway? As though that made him suspicious.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Basically, anyone who looks at intelligence as a vice or looks down on people who are smart or knowledgeable is somebody you can basically just ignore, because you can tell that information is not what's driving them, and so you're not going to get through to them with information or with logic or common sense. It's just they have their position, they have their hill that they're going to die on, and they're going to do it completely unencumbered by factual reality of any kind. And
yeah,
people like that, I used to think that you can get through to people like that, or that you can make it. I know better now. There comes a point where you just say, this person is hopeless, and you back away slowly, and you try not to encourage and try to minimize the damage, because you're not going to be able to get through. No matter what you do, they're not going to change.
No, my philosophy is life's too short. Like, I have like my own personalized version of Pa Kent's little pep talk to Clark in the first Superman movie, where he says, "Son, all I know is you were put here for a reason, and it's not to score touchdowns. And for me, it's not to argue with idiots." Like,
I,
I
I
mean,
remember a period when you were doing a number of different, going on different shows on YouTube, and
yeah,
you went on one where I was, in the chat on that one. They have their own site and everything.
yeah.
But what they did was basically anybody who was supporting you in any way got booted from the chat and wasn't allowed back in.
Yeah, so it was
You're talking about evolution, and
yeah,
you had made a point similar to one that I made, that like microevolution is a belief that if you can add up 1 + 1 + 1,
right.
but even if you add a million together, it will never add up to 1,000.
Yeah, exactly.
And you were making that point. I sort of made it in the chat around the same time, and then all of a sudden I was disconnected. When I tried to get back in, I couldn't.
Yeah.
Anyone who supported you got booted.
I think I remember that. I think that was the shock of God, quote unquote, debate. And I stopped doing those because what's the point? I mean, what's the
I
point?
remember you bailing on someone. I could only watch it for like 90 seconds. It was you hung out for like about half an hour before you bailed on it.
Yeah.
But the one guy was trying his entire argument that he made for like half an hour straight, apparently, only watched 90 seconds, like I said, was that simply by debating the issue with him, you were granting his opinion validity, admitting that he was right.
Yeah. I mean,
The fact that you were even open to willing to discuss it automatically made his position half an hour. I mean, it was the most incredible sophistry I think I've ever seen presented as legitimate.
and
And
but I mean, in a way, he was right. In a way, if you do, I mean,
which is why you don't do those things
which yeah,
anymore because
if you do argue with someone about their ridiculous bullshit position, the fact that you are taking the time to argue with them about it does imply that it's worth arguing about, even if it's not. You know,
which is why you stop doing those
which is
things in large part.
one of the reasons why I stopped doing it. Yeah, because like I just sunlight is not always the best disinfectant. Like,
And plus, you have better things to do than bash your head repeatedly off a wall because you'll
yeah,
hurt yourself and the wall will be just fine.
well, yeah, I mean that's another thing. It's like, and this was
I mean, there might be
especially,
blood stains on it, but it doesn't care.
but it's a perfectly fine wall. I mean, I think the blood gives it character. Uh, it was really prevalent in the atheist community. Like, well, if there's an argument to be had, you have to have the argument. You know what I mean? It's like this, almost like a bullshit kind of machismo, where it's like if somebody challenges you to a debate, you have to have the debate. You can't. What are you, yella? You know? And it's like, no. If someone with an utterly inane, unjustifiable, invalid position is demanding that you debate them over it, you can just ignore them. You're under no obligation.
And the more ridiculous argument is, the more likely it is you should ignore them.
Yeah, like exactly. So the idea isn't to bring it back to the vaccination thing. Like, uh, if you are the type of person, especially if you are an adult, and you are again, and you don't have any medical reason not to get it, and you are able to get the COVID vaccine without any kind of undue hardship or anything, and you're just choosing not to get it, um, you're a fool. And I have absolutely no pity for you. I hope that something awful happens to you, and I hope it hurts because you deserve it. But it is not my job to try and persuade you to get it. I mean, there's an entire medical establishment that is telling you to get it. There's 600,000 dead people in the United States alone that are evidence of why you should get it, and many, many, many more who have been seriously,
And,
affected by it, who were hospitalized, who are experiencing,
and
serious
the
effects.
simple fact that people are still getting hospitalized for COVID are the people who haven't gotten the vaccine. I mean, that's clear as day. The trail of evidence. I mean, it's just incredible that this is still a thing.
Yeah. So, but it's not my job to convince you. You know, like it's just keep away from me.
Yeah, I mean,
Like, it's
there
not my job to convince you. You have no idea how little I am invested in your well-being. If you are a person who is willfully choosing not to get vaccinated in the midst of a global pandemic that has killed who knows how many people, and turned life
it's in the
upside
millions.
down. Yeah, and
Worldwide, it's in the millions.
turned life upside down for the entire world for over a year. If you have chosen not to get the vaccine against that, I honestly don't care what happens to you. And if something bad happens to you, I will not shed a tear for you. Like, I have more important shit to do, and there are other people in my life that are far more deserving of my sympathy and my time and my concern than some dipshit like you. And I'm certainly not going to waste time trying to convince you that no, no, come on, man, you need to get, like, just stay home. Just try not to spread it to other people. That's all I ask. Just try not to spread it for other people. Um. So yeah,
And that pretty much sums it up. I
yeah,
mean, if you're not going to get through to people, if you're this far in and you still think the that COVID was a hoax or the vaccine isn't really a vaccine, or you're the sort of person who still thinks that Obama was a monster, but Trump was an admirable human being. There's no getting through to you at this point.
And honestly, I wish
The, this is
I
the one house on Main Street in Jenkins that had the Trump and the Build the Wall and the America First banners or signs up in the yard. Now there's someone that says "Screw Biden."
there's a house there's a house on the way to the battlefield that I pass whenever I go to the battlefield to go for a walk. They up until the election and the aftermath, they had all the pro Trump signs up. Now they have a flag hanging off their front porch that says "fuck Biden," and it makes me so happy every time I see it. This
It's like
the impotent
why does
sour
why does
grapes.
why does that from nothing says America First like rooting against the president?
Well, it's like, I mean, I just, it just makes me so happy that that
It's like
person is so unhappy, you know?
that's all they've got now.
Yeah, fuck Biden. It's just such a petulant, oh, fuck Biden. You know,
Yeah,
like, I mean,
I've seen a flag like that. There's a flag like that, nearby as well. I've seen that one. It says, they put the asterisks on so they don't get any issue with the township, I guess. But yeah, that's what it says.
yeah, it's, oh, I love it. I love it. Cause I mean, you know,
Because remember, it used to be respect for the office, but it's Republican in there.
yes, when people said fuck Trump after he tried to ban Muslims in like his first week, right? There were people like, oh, come on now, he's the president. We have to give him a chance. Okay, well, okay, apparently not.
So moving on,
Shall
we
we
got
shall we spend a few minutes talking about nerdy shit before we wrap up, as is our custom?
you had you recommended that I watch the Superman and Lois show. I saw the first 5 episodes, and I did like them.
Oh, good, good,
I
good.
did like the first. I haven't watched. There were only the 5 up at the time because they did like the break for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't seen any of the ones after that. But I have to admit that I really like how everyone, well, for the most part, they do seem like fully realized characters. It's not just this is what this person's role is in the plot,
Oh yeah, yeah,
which
and
is which really helps. It's not like this is even Lana, who honestly, outside of Clark, has the worst taste of men in almost every iteration. There's Brad, there's Whitney, there's this guy. Yeah.
at least
But
Kyle's better than Whitney.
yeah.
I still think
And,
Whitney is my least favorite Lana boyfriend.
but like even Lana's husband in this, even with the position that he's basically taking the heavily conservative position, but he's not completely unreasonable. He's
No,
not just somebody who is terrible in every way. He is realized. Like I said, he's a realized character. It's not just here's the antagonist, here's the kid with the mental issue, it's they're they seem 3 dimensional. It's like they
yeah.
thought about who these characters were before they started writing the script.
I actually really, and I mean, let's try to keep the discussion spoiler free of Superman and Lois, just in case. I know at least a couple people watching have not seen have not even seen the first 5 episodes yet, so I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. But just talking
Fair enough.
generally, um, I really like Kyle as a character. I mean, I think as a person, I wouldn't care if he fell off a cliff, but as a character, I think he's fantastic. And one I think it was in the first or second episode where um it might have been the second episode where they have the barbecue and him and Lois have another sort of exchange. And Lois basically tells him again, Morgan Edge is exploiting you. Morgan Edge is a bad person. And, one of the things she says is he underpays his workers. And Kyle says, well, some money in your pocket is better than none. And it's hard to argue with that when you're talking to someone who lives in a
There's no other
town,
way to get money.
yeah, who lives in a town that is economically depressed. Where if someone comes if some rich guy sweeps into a town where nobody has any jobs, and he says, "Here's some jobs," I mean, you can't really blame people if they
That's
care
where a
more
lot of that
about.
job creator bullshit came from.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, Lois is ultimately right, and I think the show makes it clear that Lois is ultimately right. But there
He's
is
not
at least
unreasonable.
there's room for some sympathy for the Kyle position because of the position that he and people like him are in,
And I,
which yeah
and I
is
do
really smart writing.
Yeah, and like I said, I appreciate the fact that there's more to him than that there is some 3D to him, that there is some sympathetic aspects where you can look at him and say, I understand where he's coming from. Because a lot of times when you want to make a jerk character, you put them in an occupation where they help people to say, see, they're not a bad guy. You
Oh,
put him as
right.
a doctor or as a cop, or in this case, a firefighter. Although firefighter is less common because fire is expensive to work with and dangerous, and they don't do it too often. But yeah, so it's very easy to say it's one of those show don't tell things because he works as a policeman. He has good aspects even though we never see them, and
Right.
they're doing a better approach to it than that. In
Yeah.
fact, through the first 5 episodes, honestly, the weakest part has been the Superman aspect of it. Really,
Well,
because
yeah.
you've got your ongoing storyline, and then Superman occasionally goes out and punches a guy, gets punched a few times, and the guy gets away for the most part. And the
Yeah.
Superman part almost seems disconnected from the actual story.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's going to come together more with time, but still.
It come yeah, I mean, when you get into the more recent episodes, it has come together a lot more. But and I'm not going to give specifics because I don't want to spoil anything. But there's a fight scene in the most recent episode between Superman and a superpowered adversary that feels like I don't think it probably wasn't done consciously because I don't think that the producers of the shows are actually this petty, but it feels like it can easily be read as a response to the action scenes in the Zack Snyder Superman movies because it's Superman facing off with a supervillain who has equivalent powers to his, but instead of setting it in the middle of a city, it's set they meet each other like out in the desert, like out and I don't think it specifies exactly where they're supposed to be, but it looks like somewhere out like in Colorado or
It's
Arizona or
desolate.
something, like out among the buttes. So there's like all these rocky cliffs and plateaus and stuff around. So when they start fighting, there's stuff for them to like smash each other into and have like debris flying everywhere and smoke and explosions and stuff, but you don't have to have the thing in the back of your mind of how many people are they killing,
Like
like they
like in Man of Steel, where Superman specifically brought the fight into Smallville.
right, they were fighting out in the country with nobody around and he moved it to the populated area, like
And then threw him into a railroad car full of fuel that exploded.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Uh,
it's like yeah,
I just can't say enough bad things about Zack
it's
Snyder's
just awful,
idea of
it's
Superman.
just awful.
But yeah, so what I've seen of that show, I've liked. I've also watched WandaVision. I've watched the Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Oh
So
boy, well what did you think of Falcon and Winter Soldier?
yeah, I liked it overall. Um, I it's interesting just to see that it's basically a TV show with a movie budget. So
Totally, yeah.
I mean, they're talking that they talk like 20, 30 million an episode on some of these shows, which is more than you're ever going to see on like a network TV show. So it feels like a continuation of the movies. It's not like you don't feel like it's a step down. Like you're watching, you can say, well, they're definitely working with a smaller budget. As far as the story goes, it I miss one of the kids had said that she really didn't feel like oh, I didn't actually hear all of it, so I'm trying to remember that the the girl who was the antagonist
Mm-hmm.
throughout it sort of became kind of one dimensional, unsympathetic as it got toward the end. Like you you understood where she was coming from, but then went further and further off the rails as it went on.
Yeah, well, that's kind of
That,
a trope, though. I mean, they do that a
yeah,
lot. Like,
yeah.
start out they well that seems to be a really common template for the Marvel for the MCU villains. Like I mean, they start out where they are motivated by wanting to respond to a legitimate problem, but their solution to it is just so nightmarish that that's what makes them villains. Like, I mean, even Thanos, like Thanos was concerned about, the dwindling resources and, in the universe. And he wanted to make sure that, that there would be enough, that there would be enough to go around for everybody. It's just that his solution was to kill half of everybody. It's like, whoa, dude, what the fuck? No,
That's your plan A.
yeah, that exactly. Or Killmonger in Black Panther, where it's like his grievances were all completely valid. It's just that his response was, well, let's how about we take over the world, and we run everything instead of them. It's like, well, no, wait a minute.
One
No,
thing,
that's not.
one thing I really liked about Falcon Winter Soldier was dealing to an extent with issues of overt racism.
Oh, big time. That was
And
I thought that was the best
honestly,
part of it.
I didn't realize they were going to. Because I don't know as much about the Marvel universe I do about DC universe, and I didn't know exactly who the character Isaiah was.
Uh-huh.
But I really liked, and I thought it was a sort of a subtle thing. I didn't realize that the issue of racism was going to be a bit more overt as it went on. But I liked when they when Bucky and Sam had left the house and they're having an argument, not an argument, they did sort of an argument. They're not
Uh-huh.
really angry, but they're having an argument on the street, and the police come up and they go right over to Bucky and sort of indicate that, like, this guy bothering you? Bucky
Yeah.
immediately went to the white guy and asked if the black guy was a problem and that they were going to take care of him if they had to. I thought that, and then they realized who he is. Like, oh, it's great to
Oh,
see you. Yeah,
that's what. Yeah,
but
yeah. They immediately turn on a dime when they realize that
yeah,
he's
but
Falcon.
I
Yeah.
really love that scene and how how it was kind. I mean, from my perspective, it came off as subtle but very very accurate because it wasn't clear. I mean, they weren't going out of their way to show just how racist that was, but that was very much the approach going in. That was. I bet that there are a lot of individuals, who are not white, who have had that
Mhm.
exact experience.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And
So
I
I thought
love.
it was just done so low key, but so well, so accurate.
Yeah. And I love that I love that they chose to tell the story of Sam becoming Captain America, and that they were smart enough to make the fact that he's a black man in a racist country a big part of that story.
Yes,
Instead of
that
just
was
making
that
it
was
like instead of just making it like a feel good, like, oh, Sam's Captain America, everybody, isn't this great? Like they
hand
made
wave. Yeah,
yeah, they made like all the reasons why maybe he wouldn't want to a part of the story.
I like
Yeah.
the bit about when Bucky was saying Steve believed in me. If he was wrong about you, maybe he was wrong about me as well. I thought that was I mean that's one of the
Yeah.
more obvious notes, but I like the fact that Bucky doesn't just he's not better. They didn't hit the reset button and now he's exactly who he was out of the factory in 1943. He's not the same person anymore. He can't be. And trying to come to grips with that was, I appreciated that as well.
That's something that, and WandaVision handled it in a different way as well. But it's one of the things that I have admired the most about the MCU movies, going all the way back to the first one, going all the way back to Iron Man, because the first Iron Man is very much about this sort of thing too. They get story from forcing the heroes to confront the consequences of their actions. In
Something
the
Zack Snyder knows nothing about.
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, there's the very first Iron Man movie. I mean, even though we don't, we've just met him, and most of it is backstory. We meet Tony at a point where he's this guy who has gotten rich selling weapons to people, and now he is face to face with the consequences of it, and he has to, you know, use his power to fight a threat that he himself helped to create. And that theme of the hero being forced to confront the consequences of their actions is something that comes back again and again and again in almost all of the MCU movies, and it really adds a lot of richness to it. and really makes these characters just so much more interesting because, it's not just that, well, they're flawed heroes. Their
Yeah.
flaws have meaning. Their
There's not a
flaws drive the
reset
story.
button where they
Yeah.
screw something up badly, but it doesn't matter by the time you get to the next movie. Pretty much the entire course of Phase 3 was defined by the fallout from Phase 2
Yeah,
in Ultron.
absolutely. Oh, big. Yeah, absolutely. Um, just like Ultron was spawned from Phase 1, from Tony wanting to protect the world,
And,
you know?
but in the Falcon and Winter Soldier, I also like the fact that they try to do another Captain America, and they bring out, I think, John Walker,
Yes. Another
and
great character. Yeah.
a guy who is honestly is trying his best the entire time and isn't quite able to do it.
Yeah.
And the scene at the end of the one episode after he loses his shit a bit, and
Hmm.
seeing it angled up at him, and he's standing there, and he's holding the shield, and there's the blood on the
Yeah.
shield, which that scene harkened back to something that Steve had done previously to an extent, not to that extent, but yeah, yeah. I just thought that was a really powerful and kind of creepy image, what it
Oh
stood
yeah.
for at that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah, John Walker was another tremendous character. Um, I liked
Hard to be likable the way he was presented, but he really was somebody who was doing his best. He wasn't and had a moment of meltdown that he ended up paying for. But
yeah,
yeah, but
yeah.
he I think a lot of people hated him for basic reasons, for obvious reasons. But I don't think he was that bad of a character.
No, he's a great character. One, I
He
think
was a great character who was put in sort of he was put in an unwinnable situation.
yeah. Well, and I mean, part of the like there are some characters that you're not supposed to like. Sometimes when I see like people talking about TV shows and movies and stuff on social media,
You can A character can be sympathetic and still not be likable.
well, yeah,
That's not the same thing.
people complain about certain characters and the fact that they're unlikable as though them being unlikable is a sign of bad writing. Like I feel like some people like they need to be able to like all the characters, and if they don't like the character, then they think it's a bad character or they think it's bad writing. And to me that's a really shallow way to look at it. I mean, like I don't like the character like I don't like the Joker. The Joker is a very bad person, you know, but the Joker at least in certain
Been written
depictions,
well.
in
Yeah.
certain depictions, the Joker is a terrific character. I don't want to like him. He's a murderer. He's not good at all. But if written correctly, he's a good character, and there are ways in which you can do Batman, where Batman is not likable, but he still works as a character. Like whether it's a hero or a villain, not every character is
Bat-
meant to be likable. Not every character
Batman,
has to be likable.
Batman shouldn't necessarily be likable. He's certainly not admirable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen some things you know, with complaining about aspects of which Tony Stark can come off as a bit of a jerk. Like even the most recent Spider-Man movie, where a lot of that is fallout from Tony Stark not really caring about other people to an extent, or
Right.
not treating people well, and there's fallout from that. And I remember seeing some people getting upset about Tony Stark being portrayed that way, and it's like, this is the man who made his fortune selling weapons of mass destruction and not caring about the
Yeah.
consequences, and just living his life. He's like a hedonist, did whatever he wanted to do, didn't care about anyone else, and honestly, Pepper went along with it. They were not really likable characters. They became a
No.
bit more admirable, but there are still aspects of them where they are not good people, and that is natural,
Tony's
realistic.
Tony's whole character arc from Iron Man all the way to Endgame was about him in fits and starts learning to grow beyond himself and to care about other people and to be selfless. Like of he isn't a good person when he starts. That's the point. That's intentional. You're not like he is a jerk.
And there are
That's
aspects
the
of his
point.
character that aren't going to change. If you're running a multi-billion-dollar business, you're going to put noses out of joint. Even if you are a quote-unquote good guy, you're going to stomp on some toes. You're going to hurt some people in the process. It's unavoidable.
Yeah. Yeah, so, there are lots of characters that are magnificent characters that are not likable people, and that's okay. Um but but yeah, I mean, I really like the that sort of aspect of Falcon and Winter Soldier, that it deals with the fallout of things, it deals with the consequences of things.
But that,
WandaVision was go ahead.
yeah, I was going to ask about WandaVision. On that front, is Wanda really, has, of all the characters, has Wanda done the least to actually have to deal with the fallout of what she's done?
Well, I mean, like the entire series ended up being her dealing with the fallout. Or
Right?
at least having to cope with her grief and her sense of loss,
Yeah,
and then having to deal with what she did to cope with it. You know what I mean? Like,
right. But what
um,
she did to cope with it at the end is like she just goes away and it's somebody else's problem joining
that's true. Yeah, she didn't. We
with that.
didn't. Yeah,
Just throw that out. You didn't get much impression of it.
she didn't really have to deal with the consequences of what she did in the series. Like maybe if she, the next time we see her, maybe she'll have a little bit of that. But
And that series, I mean, it was so well done. Not just the concept of it, but how well they executed it. Like when they first walk in at the beginning of the episode, when they walk into the house, I'm like, this is like the Dick Van Dyke Show, which turns out it
exactly.
exactly was. And then there was the beginning theme where he would trip over the ottoman, and then they
And and
catch it,
Vision phased
catch
through
it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah, just walk through it like it's
I
not
love it.
there.
I love it.
And it was but doing the different sets and the different stud appearances and getting the tone right. I mean, they did such a good job with shifting it through the eras and getting the feel of that kind of sitcom right. It was and I remember at the time, because I hadn't seen it yet, you commenting about how it had to become more standard as it went on, simply
Yeah.
because there's no other option. Because when you're starting that far out in left field,
Right.
you kind of got to bring it back to reality at some point. But I thought they handled it very very well. I'm still concerned about the fact that after Wanda does all of that, that there's the implication that she just up and took off and left other people to deal with it, and that she's trying to figure out who she is, but she left a lot of wreckage behind.
Yeah. Yeah. I as far as the starting out so experimental and then getting more conventional as it goes along. I mean, like, that um I think the show handled that as probably as well as it could have. I think that is just one of the pitfalls of choosing to tell the story that way. I mean, I do think that like the first half of the series is by far the strongest part, because I loved the sitcom stuff. I thought all of that stuff was hilarious and was really
And
clever. And
yeah,
um,
and even to the point where they were kind of meta about it at times, where
oh
they
yeah,
start to realize something's wrong, or some of the stuff with the Office episodes, like you don't ask questions,
yeah,
or I love the bit with Vision, like, but I'm supposed to be getting. What am I doing here doing this interview? It stands up, he starts throwing off the microphone and
yeah,
knocking over the lights and stuff. And I just metaphorically, I practically fell out of my chair at that moment. You
yeah,
know,
yeah. I mean, it was so. Yeah, I did the more it sort of gradually turned into a more standard Marvel movie. I do think it lost something, but at the same time, like it almost needed to do that. And
yeah,
it still kept that emotional core of, when it ultimately became about Wanda and about her grief. And that carried it along to the end quite well, I thought. Um,
right. Because if it starts that far out, it has to come back. You can't stay that far. It has to connect somehow back to quote unquote reality,
yeah,
for want
yeah.
of a better term.
And
But
I appreciated how both shows, how Falcon and Winter Soldier and WandaVision were so different from each other, because WandaVision was very off model, for
Yeah,
the
and I
most
gotta
part.
say that was a very daring choice. That you're going to Disney Plus and you're trying to do the TV series based that fit in the Marvel Cinematic Universe and really linking them in a way that the shows haven't been necessarily in the past. The Netflix shows and so on, and it ties in heavily. And they start by doing sitcom parodies. I mean, that's a daring choice to start off with your new your new approach.
Yeah, and
And I give them credit for that because it'd be very easy to just do the same thing and trying to go out and present in a different way is a very intelligent choice.
yet when they followed that up with Falcon and Winter Soldier, that like the WandaVision was sort of the experimental one. Falcon and Winter Soldier really felt like more of a conventional Marvel movie,
Right.
and
It absolutely did.
they both worked. Like they both worked on their own terms,
And
and I don't know if
because it was a TV show, they were able to devote more time to character aspects rather than plot because a lot of things get rushed in the movie because you only have so much real estate. When you're doing a TV show where the episodes can be different lengths and you can do however many episodes you want, you have a
right.
lot more room to go in and spend an episode working on the boat. You know,
Yeah. And I'll tell you something else about, I think with both of them, and I didn't really think of this at the time because I was just enjoying them as I was watching them. And I guess I was thinking of them more in terms of parts of the MCU as opposed to streaming shows. But I think both WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier mostly avoided that the problem that a lot of streaming series have, where it feels like they made the wrong number of episodes. Like where I mean, even relatively good streaming series, like some of the Marvel Netflix shows, like the Marvel, like the Netflix Daredevil and Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, like those were fantastic. Those were great shows. But even them, like it felt like maybe 13 episodes is a little too much. Like it kind of starts to drag a little bit before you get to the end, and then it picks back up as they sort of barrel toward the finish line.
is it one of those
And
things where they're contracted for a certain number of episodes before they have the story?
I don't. I mean, I think probably, but
Because
I
I
don't
get the
know.
impression by just how the difference in the length and the number of episodes of these two new series, not having seen any of Loki yet,
Yeah.
I I get the impression they decided what the story was and wrote, and however many episodes it came out to, and that was the end.
Yeah, which makes
It
sense.
wasn't something where they contracted people like a TV series for X number of episodes. They said, "You're doing the series. Here's the dollar figure. We're not worried about how many episodes. We'll figure that out later."
Yeah, which makes sense because I mean they're putting it up on their own platform. It's not like they had to sell the show to anybody. Like
Right.
Disney owns the show and Disney's putting the show on its own streaming service. So, if the producers say, "Hey, we think this is about 8 episodes," that probably isn't that much of an issue. Whereas, someone at Netflix might say, "I don't know, we kind of like to have 13."
Yeah.
you know.
If you have a sitcom plot, if you're doing like a sitcom parody, you can do an episode that's 24 minutes long, plus
Yeah.
like 8 minutes of credits in 14 different languages. But you know,
Right.
but it's just because one thing about television, I mean, when you have to do a certain number of episodes, you're worried about sweeps and so on, and having the commercial breaks fit into the right places. It really limits you on what you can do, and you don't have that issue with streaming services or BBC if they don't have the commercials in the show. But you
Right.
don't have the issues because you're not trying to fit into a format necessarily or
Yeah.
restrictions on the format. You're like, I'm telling my story. Period.
I do think I do think having smaller episode orders per season is usually a good thing. And the example that I've used for a long time was the original BBC version of The Office, which is 2 6 episode seasons, and then like a Christmas special, and that's it. Like it's like this tiny little perfect thing,
Well,
and
the more
you know,
serialized something is, I think the more large number of episodes ends up hurting it.
oh, I agree. I think that's one of
If
the
you're
yeah.
doing, I think episodic television with the primetime directive, leave everything exactly how you found it. I think that lends itself more to doing a huge 20, 22, 26 episode season like used to be common. because that doesn't require as much of a commitment. Even though it's more episodes, it requires less of a commitment from the audience because things you can miss episodes and not really miss any story. When you do
Yeah.
something that's serialized, you're asking for a commitment from the audience, and I think the counter on that is that you can't do as many episodes or as long a story because you're going to start losing people.
Yeah. Or you have to do things with, you know, to sort of pad out the story. Like, I don't know. I think this was, I mean, it was probably the intention all along, but it feels like in the first season of Star Trek Discovery, where they have that multi-episode arc in the mirror universe toward the end of the season. That looking back, that feels like padding to me. Like that feels like, oh, we're a couple episodes short. They want 15 episodes. We don't have 15 episodes worth of story. Let's do like 4 episodes in the mirror universe. You know what I mean? It because I remember watching it at the time, going like, Jesus, they've been in the mirror universe for a long time. Like there's only a couple episodes left in the series. Like they're still in the mirror universe. What are we doing here?
Well, yeah, it
Um,
reminds me a little bit of the original Doctor Who was serialized as like 25 minute episodes in in
yeah,
multiple parts. You do one a week, and when they were trying to take advantage of how popular the Daleks were, they did the longest storyline they'd ever done was 12 episodes, which trying to cash in a bit on the popularity, but they admitted by the end that that was just way too long, and they never did it again because by the time you get to the end of that, you've been doing the story for 3 months,
yeah. It's
and
difficult to maintain the momentum.
people are going to forget what happened at the beginning by the time you get to the end, and if you're trying to join in as a new viewer, you haven't seen it, and you come in and you discover that it's part 9, you know,
Yeah,
so I do think that the lower episode count works better for something that's more serialized and that requires you to watch the whole thing. Because you can't just tune in and watch episode 4 of Falcon and Winter Soldier and know what's going on.
yeah. Well, that's why I mean, even in comic books, like 4 or 5 or even 6 issue story arcs are a lot more common than like 12 issue story arcs because that's a long time to stretch out a story. You
And
know.
when you do stretch out a story like that, it ends up being this format that I always hate, where they're trying to track down you know they're trying to track down a certain number of items and they're checking a different place, so every issue is one item, or they're trying to find out where a problem is coming from. So every issue is we're going to go to this place, we're going to go to that place, we're going to go to this place, and you know that you've just got this completely self-contained. Well, they're going to go in this, and they're going to find out this is not the right place because we've got a lot more parts in the story.
Yeah. Oh, you mean like the second season of The Mandalorian,
I
where
haven't
they
seen The
where
Mandalorian, I
they
must
they
say. So.
they did that your princess is in another castle bullshit like at the end of every episode. It was like the second season of The Mandalorian was basically, and I won't spoil anything in terms of specific plot stuff, but it was basically Mando is looking for this thing. Somebody tells him he can find this thing if he goes to this planet. He goes to the planet, finds somebody, says, "Hey, where's the thing?" They say, "Well, we don't have the thing, but they have the thing." So he goes to the other person. He says, "Where's the thing?" They say, "Well,
Next episode, yeah.
if you help us with this problem, then we'll give you this thing." And he gets the thing, and then the thing tells him he has to. It's like it's video game plotting. It's like you can you. It's I need this MacGuffin, but in order to get this MacGuffin, first I have to get this MacGuffin. Now that I've got this MacGuffin, I need to go get this MacGuffin. It's just, and after a while, it just gets annoying. Where it's just like, God damn
Yeah, because it was. I remember being the first time that really annoyed me is when, in fairly short order, the Batman comics were doing like the Contagion storyline, and
I remember
every
that.
issue was trying to track down, one of these vials of disease or whatever it was. And around the same time, this was not too long after Superman died and came back. There was a Dead Again storyline where he was trying to track down where this, Superman's alive, but there was the body was back in the tomb, and he's trying
Yeah,
to track it down. And every issue was, well, he tracked down Brainiac, well, he went to Darkseid, where he goes to all these different places trying to track it down. And every issue feels like a wild goose chase for that exact reason,
yeah.
because it's understandable when you're doing issues that you can compartmentalize like that. It's easier to write, but it's not as interesting a story.
Yeah. Oh, it's like when you would buy those action figures and like each figure had a piece of the big figure. So you had to buy like all six figures to get all six pieces to make the big figure, you know? And it's like I don't know if I want the big figure that bad. You know, like after a certain point, I don't know.
But
Um,
that's a marketing thing. Probably the worst
yeah.
example of that I ever saw that it really, really annoyed me was, and I didn't get all the books because the Star Trek novels, the Next Generation novels, whatever, they did a storyline that crossed over multiple novels called Gateways,
Yeah.
and had to do with the Iconian gateways from the Next Generation. And what happened was basically there was different stories from different eras. The Peter David's New Frontier, which was original characters, there's a Deep Space Nine. There are all these different things, and apparently, pretty much everyone ended with them going, some characters going through a gateway and ending up somewhere else. And the I thought, they'd all the characters would get together and have to deal with something together. No, no, no. They all went through gateways to their own place and dealt with some other issue and then got back. But that last part of each of the stories was in a separate book that was released as a hardcover. So you're paying, $6, $7 for the novel, and then the final chapter of it is going to be in a hardcover that costs like $26.
Jesus Christ.
It's like if you have a movie theater where you've got 20 screens and there's 19 movies playing, and you pay your 10 $8-10 to get in, and you watch the movie and it's getting up to the climax, and suddenly 10 minutes before the movie ends, 5-10 minutes before it ends, the screen goes blank and it says that if you want to see the rest of the movie, you have to go into this. They were showing the last 5 minutes of all 20 films in as a 2-hour film in screen number 20, but you got to pay $30 for the ticket to get into
Yeah.
that one. That's what they did with those novels, and I really did
That's
not appreciate it.
no, that's irritating. Well, yeah, that's like how did this
How
like
brazen is that?
well, it's like how did this even make it out of the fucking pitch meeting? Like didn't
Like
anybody
if
say like they're going to hate this?
if all the characters had gotten together and had to deal with the problem together, that's one thing. Each one is still isolated from the others. They just happen to be in the same book.
That's so weird.
I did not buy that book. I ended up at one point the one New Frontiers novel released the chapter or the ending of the story. They had a CD-ROM that had like all the earlier books in PDF format or something,
Yeah.
and it had that story, the ending of that story that I hadn't read, and that's how I found out what happened. But I didn't actually pay for the hardcover book that had the ending of all the other stories I wasn't interested in.
Yeah. What a gimmick.
It was terrible. All right, so we pretty much wrapped up here.
Yeah, shall we call the festivities to a close?
Yeah, I'm going to do one quick thing. I'm going to do a plug for something for my, because you're normally
Go for
plugging
it.
your various shows. Yeah, we've talked about that, joked about it. I wrote something else that ended up on fanfiction.net.
Okay.
I don't know if you've seen that or not, but I posted a story a couple on the 10th, actually. It was the third anniversary of my son Scotty's passing.
I haven't
And
seen that, no, but I'll link
yeah,
it in the video description so people
I
can read it.
posted a story. It's called "I Wanted So Much More," and it's just it's actually James Potter and Sirius Black, and on the day that Sirius finds out that his brother has passed away. And so I
Oh,
wrote
cool.
a story about that and posted it on fanfiction.net. And again, my usernames are Varjack76, and it's under the title of the story is "I Wanted So Much More," and that's something I posted a little over a week ago, and I just wanted to plug that.
Absolutely,
So if
man.
you want
Yeah.
to read it or give any feedback, I'd be happy to hear it. So
I would, yeah, and I will definitely add the link to the video description here so anybody who watches can go check it out.
yeah,
That's terrific. Yeah,
but
absolutely.
yeah, still dealing in my own way.
Yeah,
These things
well,
don't end.
I mean, and being able to write definitely helps. Being able to channel it somewhere
Yeah,
is
it's one
better
of my
than not.
releases.
Yeah,
A lot of times when I need to think about things, I just play video games and it percolates in the back of my head. But every now and then, I just need to write and pound things out. And so,
hmm yeah,
yeah, so just wanted to mention that and encourage people to go over and check out that story.
absolutely. Everybody go read that story.
Even you, Pierre.
Fuck Pierre. What's Pierre going to say? I did not like the story.
It was in the wrong language.
I do not read the English good. It needed more cooking.
Yeah, that's what the story's about. Cooking.
Could someone prepare a meal, perhaps, in the story? Or smoke a cigarette? Because he's French.
Neither of those things happen.
Okay, well, shit. Well, Pierre's not going to dig it. I'm sorry, Pierre's not going to dig it. I can predict that already. Anyway, I guess that's it.
And thank you for watching, everyone. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks everybody for watching. And yeah, if you're watching live, give me a few minutes. If you're watching the archive version, it's probably there already. But I will add the link to Var's fanfic story in the description so everybody can read it. And yeah, that's it, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for watching. If you haven't been vaccinated and you can get vaccinated, please do it. What do you?
Get vaccinated, damn it.
Get vaccinated, damn it. All right.
This is very simple. You show up, they give you the shot. You don't even have to pay for it. You just show up, they give it to you. You go home, you're fine. I mean, all medicine should be like that.
Couldn't be simpler. Yeah, I know. It's like it's the model for what healthcare should be just generally. You show up at a place, they give you the medicine you need, you go home.
Yeah, there's not a pile of paperwork. You don't have to deal with insurance. There's no payment. It's just done.
Yeah. And you're surrounded by the National Guard, or at least I was. That maybe we don't need to keep that part permanently, but you know. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. See you later.